I'm sure you've probably heard of Dragon Ball, because Dragon Ball is the most popular and influential Japanese artwork in existence, directly inspiring the next generation of popular manga like One Piece and Naruto, and also just teaching the entire millennial generation how to draw all around the world. Akira Toriyama's work has been cited and referenced so often that it's impossible to even imagine how the present-day artistic landscape would look without Dragon Ball. Even in spite of the wide criticism and the scathing critique from worldwide tastemakers, the franchise has nonetheless continued to enrapture new audiences decade after decade for nearly 45 years as of this writing. Now, it's purely by coincidence that the creator of Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama, shares a very common Japanese first name with another one of the most important illustrated stories to come out of Japan in the 80s, namely Akira. Originally a manga from Katsuhiro Otomo, Otomo himself actually personally turned it into an animated feature film which redefined the entire world's perspective on animation. The film released in 1988 and spread across culture through the 90s. In fact, both original manga started in the early 80s, but by the mid-90s would become some of the biggest cultural tour de force coming from Japan that helped to spread anime and manga culture worldwide. But unlike Dragon Ball, Akira was the king of cult anime. It was never the biggest thing in the world, but it was an absolute critical darling that still appears in lists of the greatest feature films ever made to this day, not just animated. Naruto creator Masashi Kishimoto specifically cited the image of Akira's movie poster as his inspiration to start drawing, directly combining his influence from Otomo with his love of Toriyama's Dragon Ball, thus giving us Naruto. And I don't think that the visual impact of Akira on the cyberpunk genre could possibly be overstated. It's pretty much right under Blade Runner as the biggest pull from which the genre gets its visual ideas. Now, while these two stories almost couldn't be more different in terms of their vibe, their intended audience, or their overall reputation for quality, what they share is a common foundation in influence, being the children of the 20th century's single most influential auteur, the late, great Osamu Tezuka. In my previous video, I explained how Osamu Tezuka essentially invented the medium of graphic novels. And in the process of doing that, he brought manga to mainstream popularity in Japan, and eventually even brought anime to a worldwide audience by adapting his own popular Astro Boy series into animation in the early 1960s. In that video, I had included footage from a TV special which saw Akira artist Katsuhiro Otomo reflecting on the legend Tezuka's then recent passing and interviewing some of the most famous creators to have carried his influence over the prior 40 years that he had been active. Otomo can be seen in that documentary stating that he kept up with Tezuka's insane number of publications, and it's not all that difficult to see the echoes of Tezuka's Metropolis adaptation or his religious epics like Buddha or Phoenix loudly resonating in the pages of Akira. Near the end of his life, Tezuka had himself stated that he was jealous of Otomo's exceptional illustrative skills, which on paper more so resembled his other huge influence in French comics legend Mobius than most of Japan's popular manga of the time. But Otomo might never have even lifted a pen to start with if not for his love of Tezuka starting in childhood. Dragon Ball's Akira Toriyama, who sadly copied Tezuka in dying entirely too young of constant overwork, had never been as much of a public-facing figure as Otomo. But even if he had never announced his Tezuka's influence, and of course he did, that influence would have been self-evident in Dragon Ball. From its chaotically freewheeling tone and its excitement for illustrative experimentation, all the way to just the power scaling battles that exactly resemble Astro Boy's famous Pluto arc, Toriyama's work felt like the natural next step from Tezuka's. Tezuka had kept shifting gears and always starting new series all the time, always incredibly more ambitious than what he was actually able to accomplish, which sounds insane in light of his being one of history's most accomplished artists. Toriyama, on the other hand, played ball with his editors and his audience a lot more, and he stuck to one thing long enough to fully refine its vision, until it had the wings to fly on its own, even in the wake of his passing. If there is any good reason that Astro Boy isn't still a globally demanded property, it's because Dragon Ball's been holding down its position for even longer than Astro Boy had really been culturally relevant. Osamu Tezuka's greatest strength as a creator had also been his greatest weakness. He wanted to do everything, and his skills at delegation were nearly non-existent. In spite of the many artists who would become famous after having worked as assistants or been directly inspired by him, he never really set anybody up to carry his torch, to actually continue his own work. And so the children of his influence had to carve their own paths and create their own lineages in order to continue forward. Toriyama, on the other hand, trained his descendants who still draw Dragon Ball today, and his progeny include the likes of classic Digimon character designer Katsuyoshi Nakatsura, while his die-hard fans include the likes of the most successful mangaka still living today, One Piece creator Eiichiro Oda. But really, between all of the different shonen manga that have copied from Dragon Ball, it's really hard to even picture battle manga as a genre that doesn't have Dragon Ball's shadow being cast over it. Katsuhiro Otomo's assistants, meanwhile, included one of the greatest writer/artist/directors ever to live, the tragically taken way too young Satoshi Kon, who gave us a few of my personal favorite movies and manga ever, like Perfect Blue, Opus, and Millennium Actress. Naoki Urasawa, who is sometimes hailed as the most critically beloved mangaka still alive, cited Otomo as an influence from the beginning, and so it shouldn't be too surprising how he also brought the serious tone of an Otomo story into readapting the famous Pluto arc of Astro Boy that I mentioned earlier. Dragon Quest creator Yuji Horii considered Otomo as an influence while also hiring Toriyama to do the design work for the most influential Japanese RPG series ever, Dragon Quest. Now I could literally make this video hours long just listing the different artists who Tezuka, Toriyama, and Otomo touched with their influence, either directly through working with them or just by turning their attention to the arts in the first place. But the reason that I wanted to highlight the Tezuka connection between Otomo and Toriyama is specifically that both of them became some of the most beloved artists from Japan just around the time of Tezuka's death, and they are both still so integral today that you cannot tell the story of modern art without bringing their names early into the conversation, in spite of the wildly different reputations of their works. Dragon Ball is the daddy of the hyper-commercial, endless-running mega franchise, adored by fans and ignored by snooty critics, while Akira is championed as the very pinnacle of self-contained, symbolism-laden, socially conscious storytelling in both animation and comics. But at the end of the day, both of them are unmistakable as the offspring of the ultimate, untouchable god of creativity, Tezuka-sama. If you are a great lover of Akira Toriyama's work, I recommend following my friend Gigadonk, because she is also a diehard Toriyama fan who's been talking about Dragon Ball and also Dragon Quest, and I would highly recommend that if you like Dragon Quest, you subscribe to our joined channel, Slime Dolls, where we just put out a 45-minute gigantic, super edited discussion video about the first Dragon Quest game, and we intend to cover each Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy game in chronological order, at least up through Chrono Trigger, which is where the creators of both of those franchises collided on one game. And if you love Katsuhiro Otomo's work, stick around on this channel, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, hit the like, leave a comment so that I can keep doing this job and the algorithm promotes my videos, because I will definitely be talking more about Akira and about Otomo's other work going into the future. If you love Satoshi Kon, please watch my 80-minute Perfect Blue analysis. It is far and away the most in-depth Perfect Blue analysis on the platform. It will change your life, I'm not even kidding. After I made that video, I had seriously considered doing a further deep dive on Satoshi Kon, but before I did that, I wanted to talk about his influences. And when I was looking into Kon's influences, I found that he had basically been the protege of Katsuhiro Otomo, and when I started researching Katsuhiro Otomo, the first thing I heard from him in any interview was, it all goes back to Tezuka. And that was what started me going down the Osamu Tezuka research hole years ago that led to these last couple of videos you've seen on the channel. I don't think you can really tell the story of manga or anime or otaku culture without starting at Tezuka and working your way forward through classics like Otomo and Toriyama's work. Anyways, I thank you again for watching. I know that it can be complicated to follow my content because I have lots of different channels, but everything I do is on this link tree that I always put on screen in my videos, so please go there if you want to learn what I've got going on. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And never forget, Tezuka forever.